and bolster deterrence and defense capabilities of the NATO alliance. These, as all the other ones we've talked about in recent weeks, are not permanent moves. They are temporary moves. And we're going to adjust our posture continuously as conditions require. And as President Biden has noted before, we are not and will not send forces into Ukraine. So these additional personnel will be going to NATO's eastern flank. Specifically, we'll be sending a number of KC-135 refueling aircraft out of Fairfield Air Force Base in Spokane. We'll deploy with approximately 150 personnel. They're scheduled right now, they're planned right now, to deploy to Suda Bay, Greece, to provide additional aerial refueling support to the commander of U.S. European Command. This 500 will also include an air support operations center out of Fort Stewart, Georgia. They'll comprise basically of 40 personnel. Right now they're planned to deploy to Poland and to Romania, and again to help provide additional command and control for U.S. European Command flight operations. And then lastly, about 300 personnel will be making up a modular ammunition ordnance company out of Fort Bragg and a support maintenance company out of Fort Stewart, Georgia. They'll be going to Germany to provide additional logistics support to the 1st Armored Brigade Combat Team, 3rd Infantry Division already deployed there, and what we've already talked about. Again, these are purely defensive forces. These are specifically, the ones we're talking about today, are enablers. And we said before when we deployed the additional 7,000 that there would be associated enablers with them. This is part of that support. All these posture adjustments are being done, as I think you know, in full consultation with the NATO allies in question. Okay, shifting topics if I could to the Red Hill storage facility in Hawaii. Secretary Austin decided today, and you should have the statement. If you don't, you'll have it shortly, that directs the Secretary of the Navy, in coordination with the commander of the United States Indo-Pacific Command, to take all steps necessary to defuel and to permanently close the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility in Hawaii. I know many of you are tracking the importance that leaders across the Department of Defense have placed on that November leak and the contamination that resulted from it. The Secretary, the Deputy Secretary, leaders from across the Department of Defense and Navy, as well as Indo-PACOM, remain very, very focused on this issue and the impact that it's had on families and communities, and of course our responsibilities in both national security and being good stewards of our resources and the environment. Throughout this process, the Department's approach has been guided by a commitment to protect the population, the environment, and the security of the country, goals that are mutually supportive. As the Secretary outlined in his direction to the Department of the Navy, the Department of Defense launched a thorough review of the facility's long-term future, work that was grounded in analysis and completely aligned with our focus. So a few points on today's decision. First, national security. We will defuel Red Hill and reposition the fuel to land and afloat locations. This will meet our national security objectives by better positioning the United States to meet future challenges in the Pacific region while ensuring environmental stewardship and protecting the population. Secondly, as the Secretary noted, we're going to be able to take care of our people and the community. We are committed to mitigating the impacts of the November incident, and we are restoring safe drinking water to all affected residents and providing best-in-class sampling and testing to ensure the continued safety of the drinking water. And finally, we're going to complete environmental mitigation efforts for the Red Hill drinking water well and any other impacted areas and continue to engage the community on land use. One additional note, which I believe many of you are tracking, the Commander U.S. Pacific Fleet has directed a command investigation into the releases and contamination of the water supply. When that review is complete, the Navy will publicly release the report and continue to work closely with the Department of Health in Hawaii about pursuing follow-on actions. That work continues. I want to end by noting that the Secretary's decision is not considered by the Department to be some sort of quick fix. We have work to do. We know that across the enterprise with elected officials from Hawaii and local organizations, and of course with our military families, many of whom have suffered as a result of that leak and that contamination. We're going to stay transparent, as fully transparent on this work as we can. We're going to continue to update you and them as actions are taken. But we do believe that this decision by the Secretary today marks a significant first step in the path forward. With that, I'll take questions. Bob.
Thank you, John. On Ukraine, I wonder if you could discuss sort of the overall direction of the Russian campaign in Ukraine. I'm thinking in particular, for example, of their increased use of long-range fires, artillery, and rockets in recent days. Yeah. Is this an adjustment by them? Is this a new phase of the war? Are they compensating for problems in other areas? Or how would you describe the thrust of where they are right now?
With the caveat, Bob, that we don't have perfect visibility into Russian plans. What we believe is happening as the Russians continue to get frustrated and slowed down, and they really haven't made any noteworthy progress in the last few days, with the exception of down south. In the south, they continue to have some progress, but up in the north and northeast. What we assess is as they continue to get frustrated, they continue to rely now more on what we would call long-range fires. So this is bombardment, missile strikes, long-range artillery into city centers that they aren't in yet, at least not on the ground in any significant number. So we're seeing that. And, of course, that has been leading to, and as you would expect it would, when you're relying more on long-range fires, you're gonna cause more damage. And you're going to kill more people and injure more people, and so that's what we think is happening. That's what we're seeing them do, and we think it's because again they have not been able to make up for the lost time that they continue to suffer from on the ground in terms of the advancement of ground forces.
And they have not taken control of any of the cities yet? Is that?
I wouldn't say no cities. I mean, we do assess that Kherson fell to the Russians around the coast of the Sea of Azov, a town called Berdansk. We believe they have control over, certainly that we believe that they're in control of that power plant up near the Dnipro River that we talked about last week. So some smaller towns as they continue their advance down south. In the north, we do not see them have any control over Kyiv. Kharkiv, still a lot of heavy fighting outside Kharkiv. And of course, Kharkiv is really becoming a victim to a lot of these long-range fires. And then in that town to the northeast of Kyiv called Cherniv, they still are attempting to encircle the city, but they have not taken it yet. So again, I think down south you see them have a little bit more success and some control over some local population centers, but up in the north, not so much. The other one that I would note is Mariupol on the Sea of Azov, just to the south of the Donbass. We believe that they very much are aimed on taking Mariupol. Mariupol is a violent place to be right now. This is another location for long-range fires and bombardment. You've heard the mayor himself talk about power outages and water supply problems. We believe that they are trying to encircle Mariupol as well, but they have not done it yet. Jen.
John, have you seen any evidence that Russian morale among the troops is low? We've seen some reports, but have you seen any evidence of that? And how would you characterize that convoy, the 40-mile-long convoy north of Kyiv? If it doesn't have tanks in that convoy, where are those tanks? Where did they go?
Yes, I don't have perfect visibility on the convoy. We're watching it with much the same imagery that you are. We believe that the main purpose of it was resupply. So it does, when you look at the images from the air, you can see a lot of it. They don't look like armored vehicles so much as they look like resupply trucks. That's not to say that there aren't combat vehicles in there. We don't have perfect visibility on it, but the assessment is that it was largely meant to help resupply, and it is still stalled. It is still stuck. We don't assess over the course of the weekend that it has made any progress. And I'm sorry, you had another one. Morale. We certainly see what's in the open press that you see about anecdotal evidence that some soldiers are flagging in their morale. We have also picked up other indications as well on our own that that morale continues to be a problem for many of the Russian forces, particularly up in the north and the east. It is not clear to us that all of the soldiers that Russia has put into Ukraine realized that that's what they were doing, that they were actually going to invade Ukraine. It's not clear to us that they had full visibility on the mission that which they were being assigned.
And again, if that convoy was a resupply convoy and not really armored vehicles, where were those columns of tanks that were supposed to encircle Kyiv? Were they sent elsewhere?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a better question for the Russian Ministry of Defense. We don't have perfect visibility in terms of what they're moving and what alternative routes they might have taken. And I don't want to leave you with the idea that we know perfectly what each and every vehicle is in there. It looks to be like our assessment is that it's largely meant for resupply, but I can't rule out that there aren't combat vehicles. It's a very, very long convoy. We don't even know if it's all, we can't even say that it's all one convoy and not several, but it does remain, as our best assessment is, it remains stalled. Fadi.
Thank you, John. So when the reports about efforts by the Russians to recruit Syrian fighters to fight in Ukraine, first of all, what do you have to say about these reports? And based on your knowledge, did this effort start before the war or after the war? And who are these fighters they're seeking to recruit? Are they from the Syrian military, or what is your understanding of the situation?
I can't speak for Russian recruiting efforts, Fadi. We do believe that the accounts of them, the Russians seeking Syrian fighters to augment their forces in Ukraine, we believe there's truth to that. So it's interesting that Mr. Putin would have to find himself relying on foreign fighters here. Who they are going to be, how many they're getting, what they're going to pay them, all of that we don't have perfect visibility on, but we're in no position to refute the accounts that they might be seeking to recruit Syrian fighters.
And since you mentioned that, it's kind of interesting that the Russian president is trying to rely on foreign fighters. Do you have an assessment, despite all the troops he has inside of Ukraine now, why he has to go and tap into foreign fighters, especially in Syria?
I can't get inside Mr. Putin's head. He has pretty much all the combat power that he that he assembled. Our assessment is he has pretty much all of it inside Ukraine now, the ground forces in particular. So he has an awful lot of combat power available to him. We still assess that he has the vast majority of that combat power available to him. I can't begin to speculate why he would find it necessary to seek help from foreign fighters. We do believe, as I said to Jen, that they are having morale problems. They are having supply problems. They are having fuel problems. They are having food problems. They are meeting a very stiff and determined Ukrainian resistance. And we still maintain that they are several days behind what they probably thought they were going to be in terms of their progress. But I can't, honestly, I cannot get inside, Mr. Putin's brain as to why he would find it necessary to seek support from foreign fighters. David?
John, on this issue of Polish MiG-29s to Ukraine,
Yeah.
a number of U.S. officials have said this is under active discussion about how the U.S. might backfill. We just went back and looked at some previous statements by Polish officials. On Sunday, the Chancellery of the Prime Minister of Poland tweeted, "Poland won't send its fighter jets to Ukraine." On March 1st, the President of Poland said, "We are not sending any jets to Ukraine." So what are we talking about here? I mean, it sounds like this is flogging a dead horse. Is this really a proposition on the table?
I can't speak for Polish leadership, David. What we've said is that this would be a sovereign decision for a nation state to make, whether it's Poland or anybody else. Should they want to provide aircraft to the Ukrainian Air Force, that's a sovereign decision that they can make. The United States is not going to stand in the way of that. There was discussion about if a nation such as Poland were to do this, would there be a capacity for the United States to backfill those aircraft with American-made aircraft? And what I can tell you is, because I can only speak for the Department of Defense, is that we are part of an interagency discussion to examine that possibility. No decisions have been made. certainly none that we're aware of by Poland, even, as you pointed out in your quotes there. But we are having a discussion about should a nation like Poland want to do this, and should there be a desire or a need for some sort of backfill of assets? What would that look like? How would we do that? How many? From where? Those are the kinds of things we're talking about right now.
One other question on aircraft transfers. Former NATO commander General Breedlove has said that some Ukrainians have been trained to fly the A-10, and that there are, I think he said, 6 A-10s in storage available for transfer to Ukraine. Is that under consideration?
I have not heard anything about A-10s, and I can't verify the number that are quote unquote in storage. Yeah.
Thanks, John. I wanted to ask about Red Hill. What other relief or assistance might still be available to affected military families? And you'd also mentioned environmental mitigation. Can you give us a sense of the scope of what needs to be done on that site and how long it might take, or even a dollar figure that we're talking about?
Can't give you much of a dollar figure or timeline. Let me just talk process for you. Well, before I do that, the impact of families obviously is foremost on everybody's mind, and I don't want to speak for the Navy. They're working very, very hard to get these families back safely to their homes and to take care of them where they are. So I would refer you to Navy to speak to the specifics of that. But as I said, and you'll see it in the Secretary's memo, I mean, taking care of these folks is a paramount concern to him. So what's going to happen here, and this is a long way of getting to your question, which is to say I can't answer it specifically, but just so you understand process. There was already an assessment team that was in place to determine what it would take to get Red Hill operational again, because as you know, we suspended operations back in December. So it hasn't been in use since December. That assessment team will now shift their focus to help us figure out what it takes to defuel it. In other words, to get operational capacity back up again for the purpose of defueling, not for continuing operations for fueling. We'll get that homework assignment back probably at the end of April. We'll do the forensics on that, figure out what we need to do, and then once we have prepared the site for defueling, and we know we can do that safely, we estimate that it'll probably take somewhere within 12 months or so to fully defuel and close it. Then once it's closed, we'll begin to work on what the land use for it looks like going forward. And obviously a key part of that is going to be making sure that whatever we do in terms of closing down, that it's done in an environmentally safe way. All of that is to say that I can't give you beyond the year or so that we know it's going to take to defuel. Once we can start defueling, all the environmental mitigation impacts after that, we're going to have to work our way through that. And I couldn't possibly give you an estimate on what that's going to cost.
The environmental mitigation, that's a financial responsibility of DOD?
Eventually, yes, that would fall on DOD in terms of, because we're going to be obviously closing down the site. But I couldn't begin to tell you what the estimate's going to be right now. All I can tell you is the Secretary is committed to doing this. He believes this is the right decision, not just for our national security, for a more distributed and dispersed fueling capability through the Indo-Pacific, but also for the environment, for our gracious hosts and neighbors in Hawaii, and of course for our military families. Janie.
Thanks, John. I have two questions, Ukraine and South Korea. There are 100 South Korean volunteers requested support to fight the Russian invasion. Do you have anything on the number of U.S. volunteers to fight Russian invasion?
I don't have an estimate of Americans who might want to be volunteering to go there. I would say what I said last week. If you're an American and you want to do right by Ukraine, the best thing you can do is find a way to donate to so many agencies that are trying to deal with what is now clearly a humanitarian crisis in the region, certainly there in Ukraine. We still do not believe that Ukraine is a safe place for Americans to go. We urge them not to go, and if any are still there, we urge them to leave.
Another one in North Korea. I think you know already last weekend North Korea launched another missiles. How does the United States evaluate North Korea's successive missile launch?
These continue to be provocations, needless provocations at that. We urge Pyongyang to cease these missile launches and these provocations, and signal that they're willing to sit down, as we are, without preconditions, to find a negotiated way forward here and a diplomatic path to reduce the tensions on the peninsula.
Thank you.
Yeah. Tom?
Which Tom?
Whichever Tom wants. I was looking at you, Squitieri, but if you guys want to trade off, it's up to you.
You get one, I get one.
I get two.
Go ahead.
I'd like to follow up on his question, his comment about extra forces. What would the Pentagon's assessment be if Putin begins drawing troops from the remainder of Russia that were not pre-positioned to go into Ukraine?
What would our position be?
No, what would your observation and analysis be if that move is made by him?
I mean, Tom, I don't want to speculate about future decisions I would just tell you, Tom, we've assessed that he's got nearly all the mass combat power that he has assembled inside Ukraine. I haven't seen anything or any indication that he's pulling from elsewhere in the country. I don't want to get ahead of where we actually are right now. This is a Russian military invasion here, and it's difficult for us to know with great specificity on any given day what Mr. Putin's going to do tomorrow or the next day after that, and I just don't want to get ahead of where we are.
Okay. My second question is regarding Moldova. It's two-part. Have preparations begun yet to withdraw the National Guards in their training, the Moldovan forces? And if not, what changes in the training have the National Guard been doing with the Moldovan forces?
In terms of training, I'd refer you to the National Guard. I don't have a menu of the kinds of training that they do in Moldova, and I don't have any change to their posture.
But they're still staying there at this point?
To the best of my knowledge, I don't know of any changes.
Thank you.
Tom?
John, there's a continual uptick in civilian casualties in Ukraine. Do you get a sense that Russians are actually targeting civilians, as President Zelensky says, or is it miscalculation, or a little bit of both? And we talked earlier about long-range fires. How much of that has to do you have a sense, with increased civilian casualties?
I think we absolutely assess that the reliance on long-range fires, and I know that's a very wonky term, but artillery, missile strikes, rocket attacks are having an increased effect on civilian casualties and the damage and destruction of civilian infrastructure, be it homes, churches, hospitals, schools. We see that increasing for sure. And we do believe that it's a direct result of their increasing reliance on these long-range fires. Now, the degree to which we can prove that these are incidental versus intentional, I don't think we've got that sense with any great fidelity, Tom. So it would be imprudent for me to speculate that we know for sure that a given target was intentional or not. And I understand the context of the question. The bottom line is more civilians are being killed and wounded. More civilian infrastructure is being damaged or destroyed. And Mr. Putin still has a choice here. Not to escalate, not to be more aggressive in the use of these long-range fires and in his capabilities, but to find a diplomatic path forward and to end the invasion.
Government or military targets they're going after now happen to be in more residential civilian areas, or you just don't know?
I don't have perfect visibility into their targeting process. But look, clearly, if you're having to rely on long-range fires to go after cities because you can't move into city centers right now, and you're even if pure as the driven snow, you're going to go after just military and government targets in a big city like Kyiv or Kharkiv, you are increasing the chances that even in the best of your targeting that you're going to miss, and you're going to hit targets that you didn't intend to hit. I'm not making excuses for Mr. Putin's targeting here. We can't prove on any given day how much is indiscriminate and how much is intentional. Bottom line is, more people are getting hurt, more damage is being done, more people are having to now flee their country, and all of it, Tom, intentional or not, was completely unavoidable. Completely unavoidable, and frankly, can still be unavoidable going forward. Mr. Putin does the right thing. Take his troops out, stop the invasion, and sit down and try to find a negotiated way forward.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
So is, Jen Psaki said on Friday, I think it was, that the U.S. is looking into whether Russia is intentionally targeting civilians, talking about the potential for some sort of an ICC action here. Is DOD providing information to this review that's ongoing? Are you looking for actual evidence that the Russians are targeting civilians for potential criminal court?
Not that I'm aware of.
And then second thing, back to the jets. Can DOD say whether there are F-16s in an inventory right now that are not yet dedicated or supposed to go to some other country or go to the United States or something that could be sent to Poland in a quick way? Jen Psaki was also asked about that today, and she was talking about the logistical hurdles and how it can take years to transfer weapon systems and aircraft to another country. So I'm sure at this point, now that this has been several days, there's got to be some knowledge right now if there even are F-16s to provide to Poland quickly.
I think we're still working our way through all that, Court. We don't have, it's too soon to know with great specificity what a potential backfill would look like. But we're just not there in the discussions, even within our own interagency, much less with a nation like Poland. So, it would depend on how many they would need. It would depend on how long they would need them. And then you'd have to look at where in the inventory could you possibly provide that. And Jen's right. I mean, if we're talking about a permanent sale, that can take some time. We're just not there yet. I mean, I appreciate the question, but we're just not prepared to answer it right now.
Is there a process for speeding up a sale like that? I mean, I'm sure there's got to be some sort of a process, right, that would exist in DOD?
As you know, foreign military sales are done by the State Department, not by the Department of Defense. Yeah.
A follow on this. Has there been any discussions with Poles with respect to this?
With what?
With Polish government or Polish defense ministry with respect to this types of, like, transferring jets to Ukraine and then backfilling?
Again, we're at the beginning of a process here to determine what might be the right way forward. I just don't have any more detail for you.
And also, like, Polish government is categorically denying these reports. What triggered the interagency assessment in the United States if the Poles have actually no interest in doing even something like that?
As I said, I think you all saw President Zelensky held a call with lawmakers, and one of the things that he talked about was his desire for more material and to include aircraft. And so we're having a prudent discussion about if there would be a request to backfill for a nation, what that might look like.
So you're responding to what Zelensky said, not to anything the Polish government might have said?
I'm not going to get into international discussions. I'm telling you that we're looking at this. No decisions have been made.
Also, on the 500 troops, you said these are being positioned to respond to the current security environment caused by a Russian invasion of Ukraine. Saudi Arabia is actually way in south flank of the NATO. Why not, like, you position those tankers close to the theater where the tension is going on, but way south? Wasn't there any other positions or locations?
I'm happy to, these are decisions made by the European Command Commander, General Walters. And as forces get added to the theater, General Walters is best able to determine where he wants to put them and how he wants to employ them. I think I'd leave it at that. Yeah.
So if I can follow on Fadi's question on Syrian recruits, what is it that led you to believe that Russia is trying to recruit Syrian fighters? And is it based on some sort of evidence that you've seen, or just the Russian?
We have indications. We have indications. I'll leave it at that.
Does it indicate what general areas, northwest or the Kurdish-controlled area or under the Syrian regime?
I'm not going to have any more detail for you on that today. Jeff Shogel?
Thank you. Can you say what steps the Defense Department is going to take to help Navy families and other families on Hawaii who are worried about the long-term health issues that they may face from the contaminated drinking water? And also, the state of Hawaii has asked that Red Hill be defueled in 30 days. If I heard you right, it sounds as if once the Defense Department determines when it can begin defueling, the process is expected to take a year. Is it accurate to say that it is impossible to defuel the facility in 30 days? Thank you.
By the end of April, Jeff, we will get an assessment of what safe operation of the facility will look like and what needs to be done to get it back into safe operations. It is shut down right now. And in order to defuel it, you gotta be able to operate it. And so we have to know what safe operation looks like. We won't get that assessment until the end of April. Once we get that assessment, we'll review it. We will comply with the requirements that the assessment team comes back with in terms of how to get the plant, the facility back operational again. Once it's operational again, we will defuel it and we will close it, and we estimate that that will take, we can do that within 12 months. As for the families, I think you've seen it in the Secretary's memo himself. I mean, we owe these families our very best attention to make sure that they get the medical care they need for the way in which this contamination has affected their health. We are 100% committed to that. Tony Capaccio.
Hi, John. A couple questions. Is there a regular, ongoing overland resupply effort going on right now into Ukraine?
There are, there continue to be, Tony, efforts by the United States and other nations to continue to provide security assistance material to the Ukrainian armed forces. I'm not going to talk about the manner in which that material is getting to them, but we know it's getting to them and that they are able to use it.
Are the Russians at all trying to interdict or interrupt that overland traffic?
That traffic and that material continues to flow.
Another quick question. Do you have any sense of how much Russian armor has been destroyed since the invasion? Has that destruction been a contributing factor to the offense bogging down?
I don't have a count of how many vehicles or armored vehicles or combat vehicles or supply vehicles the Russians have lost. What I can tell you is that on the ground in the north, they continue to experience delays. They continue to experience a stiff resistance, and they continue to experience logistics and sustainment challenges of their own that have slowed them down. But I couldn't give you a vehicle count. Look, the other thing is, even if I could, it wouldn't be smart for me to do that because every day the Ukrainians are fighting. Every day they're in combat for their own country. And every day they do what they can to continue to slow down Russian advances. So whatever, even if I had a number, whatever I would give you today would probably not be good tomorrow.
All right, but they're destroying armor. Is that right? Can we say that? Can you say that?
I think you can see for yourself when you just look at the imagery coming out of there, the damage that they have been able to do to some Russian vehicles. Dmitry.
Hi, John. You said that nearly 100% of the Russian combat power is now in Ukraine. So I'm curious, what route did the new forces come in recent days? Do you expect a fresh Russian effort to take Kyiv now that all their forces are in the country? And then secondly, you talked about increased use of long-range fires. Are you also seeing increased use of Russian combat aircraft or other kinds of warplanes in Ukraine, or has that remained kind of static?
On the routes, Dmitry, most of what we've seen introduced in the last several days were introduced from the north, north of Ukraine. I think that's about the best way I can characterize that. And on Russian aircraft, I would say the airspace over Ukraine remains contested. The Russians have not achieved air superiority over the whole country. It is dynamic. It changes day to day, but Ukrainian aircraft are flying, Russian aircraft are flying, missiles from both are also in the airspace, very contested. I don't have the Russian air operations plan, so I can't tell you with any specificity on any given day how many of their aircraft are up and flying or what missions they're conducting. But clearly, and you can, again, you guys can see this for yourself and in the imagery coming out of Ukraine. I mean, the Russians continue to be able to fly their aircraft, but it is contested, and it is contested by the Ukrainians. Let's see, Oscar from the Polish Press Agency.
Thanks. So I wanted to ask, Dr. Carlin recently said in Congress that you were going to have to redo the global posture review in light of the new realities. And some lawmakers and governments, today Latvia, have been pushing for a permanent U.S. presence on the eastern flank. Is that something that's being considered? And when could we see the results of this overhaul? Thank you.
I think you might be misunderstanding a little bit of what Dr. Carlin said. I don't think she said we have to redo the global posture review. She said that certainly in the wake of this invasion, it would be wise for us to take a look at our European posture. That makes a lot of sense, given what we're seeing right now. And at the appropriate time, we'll do that. It's not the time now to be looking at redrawing the posture map of Europe. Right now, we're focused on making sure that we can better bolster the capabilities of the alliance, and that's what we're doing, including with those 500 troops I just talked about today. But certainly, we would be taking into consideration over the long term whether or not European posture does need any adjustments. No decisions have been made about changing any permanent presence in Europe, whether it's in Latvia or anywhere else. So we're focused on making sure that we can continue to help Ukraine defend itself, and you continue to make sure that NATO can defend itself. That's what our focus is on right now. Jared from our Monitor.
Hi, John. Just wondering if you could give us an assessment. How effective has U.S. and Western support to the Ukrainian resistance been in slowing down the Russian? Thanks.
All I can tell you, Jared, is that we know that the material that we have been sending into Ukraine, and it's not just us, it's 14 other countries, but we know that material is getting into the hands of the Ukrainian armed forces, and we do know that they're using it, and they're using it quite effectively. The results you can see for yourself. I think I'd just leave it at that. Megan, Military Times.
The last figure you had for us about the number of U.S. troops who'd been put on heightened alert to possibly go to Europe was between 10 and 12,000. Is that the same now, or have there been more troops put on that alert?
I know of no other units that were put on additional PTDO, Megan. Caitlin, Stars and Stripes.
Hi, John. Thank you. Yeah, wanted to talk a little bit more about the jet and Poland situation. Can you talk a little bit about the logistics and the problems and challenges that the U.S. would face to do that backfill? Jen Psaki today talked a little bit about, talking about where the planes would part from. Could they fly through NATO airspace? Can you talk a little bit about those problems?
I would just say, again, we're very early on in a discussion here about a possibility. It's not even a done deal at this point, but it's just a discussion about the possibility of should there be a nation that would want to give aircraft to the Ukrainians and would ask for a backfill from the United States. Should that happen, what would that look like? How would we do that? And we don't have all the answers right now. I understand the great interest in it, but the truth is we're very early on in a discussion right now about what the possibilities of that could be. We just don't have enough granularity to be able to make tough, easy decisions right now about how many aircraft, where they would come from, how they would get to where they're going. We're just not there yet. Look, I think we should all just kind of step back just a little bit here, and rather than get dragged down into the idea of a backfill of aircraft, just take a look writ large about what's going on here. Ukraine is in a significant fight for its country and its citizens. The United States and many other nations are doing a lot to try to help them in that fight. And President Zelensky has shown great courage and poise and leadership by staying in Kyiv and truly leading his country through this. And what I can tell you is that from the United States perspective, certainly from the Department of Defense, but I would say across the administration, we're going to continue to look for ways to help Ukraine defend itself. We're not always going to have all the answers in the moment that they become news, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to take them seriously and consider them and look at them and see what can be done. The other thing that we're doing, and I hope it's clear in the brief announcement I had today, is we're going to continue to look for ways to bolster NATO, to look for ways, innovative ways, creative ways, to make sure that Mr. Putin understands how seriously we take Article 5 and how seriously we take our collective security requirements inside that alliance, how seriously we consider the importance of alliances and partnerships. We've invested a lot of time in the last year in revitalizing alliances and partnerships in Europe, but around the world. And I think you're really seeing that bear fruit right now. I just think it's important to keep a little bit bigger perspective on this and not just get dragged down into the particular headline of the day. Yeah, last question.
Thanks, John. We know that bombardment has been increasing in Ukraine. Senior defense officials said that earlier. We also know that the Russians used bombers and other aircraft to attack ground targets, at least earlier on in the invasion. Can you say at this point what role Russian aircraft seem to be playing in the bombardment of these key population centers?
It's difficult for me to get into a tactical level briefing of what Russian operations look like. We don't have perfect visibility. What I can tell you, Matt, is that we continue to see Russian air forces participate in this invasion. They continue to launch weapons. They continue to conduct attacks in support of Russian objectives inside Ukraine. I can't tell you on any given day what that looks like, how many aircraft, how many sorties, how many munitions dropped. We don't have that. We just don't have that information. But they clearly are and continue to be a part of the Russian arsenal that's being applied against the people of Ukraine. No doubt about that. What I would tell you is, and I think I said this last week, I think it remains true today, we aren't seeing the level of integration between air and ground operations that you would expect to see. In other words, not everything they're doing on the ground is fully being supported by what they're doing in the air. There does seem to be some disconnects there. So it's not clear to us how significant their air operations are being in helping alleviate the lack of progress that they're having on the ground, because they don't seem to be fully coordinated between air and ground elements. But beyond that, I couldn't give you much more specifics. Okay.
John, when you said told Dmitry the forces are coming in from the north, did you just mean from Russia or also from Belarus?
I think over the last few days, we've seen them come in from both.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, everybody.